We're at a training site at the Century 21 real estate office, and we're in the company of some people who really want to know some information about lead paint in particular. And Kate Kirkwood is with us for the whole week, for the whole training program. She's a trainer and consultant, works in New Hampshire. She has a company called Lead EDU, which could be looked up online.
Education, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Education. Very busy person. This particular class, and you'll get to see some of the participants, are learning to be lead abatement workers, and some are here to get certification in being lead abatement supervisors and contractors. So, Kate, for the information of people who will be seeing this, do we have lead paint in houses in New Hampshire? I think that's a good place to start.
Sure. We actually just talked about that in the class. If in houses built before 1940, what percentage of them have lead-based paint?
89.
Just about 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
Good. Just about 9 out of 10. So you think we have a few houses built before 1940 around here?
Yeah.
Right. Typically, you know, we have the oldest housing stock in the country. We're one of the original 13 colonies. We have the oldest housing stock in the country. So yes, we have a good majority of them are lead paint. I read a study recently that said when you, contractors and painters, when you put your boots on to go out to work in the morning, you have about a 96% chance of running into lead paint somewhere, either on the properties that you're working on or in public buildings or someplace that still has the lead paint.
Okay, some of the viewers most likely are going to be interested because they're living in houses that are probably built before a cutoff date, allowing lead paint. So if somebody's thinking about remodeling, do they have to be concerned about lead paint?
Absolutely. Any house built before 1978 is a candidate for lead paint. If you have a house built before 1978, that's the cutoff at which we outlawed the manufacture of paint, lead-based paint for residential use. So anything built before 1978, if you renovate, the chances are, once you get through maybe that outer layer of latex paint, you're going to run into lead-based paint underneath it. So the problem with lead paint is not really the paint so much, but when you begin cutting into it or sanding it so that it deteriorates, that's when we cause a problem. We create this poisonous dust. So renovating is actually the worst situation.
Well, what if, because from our point of view, we list and sell property, and so real estate agents need to be kind of concerned about the issues that the seller needs to know about. So if I'm a seller and thinking about selling my home, or perhaps I'm a buyer thinking about buying a home, is this an issue I should be concerned about?
Absolutely. Your real estate agent, particularly if they've been trained in lead paint and they know some things about it, which of course here at Century 21 they take this very seriously and do a lot of training, they will have given you a Protect Your Family book, Renovate Right. Perhaps they will have talked with you about the dangers of lead. And when you sell a house before 1978, or rent an apartment before 1978, unless you know for sure the lead has been abated, you have a certified report from a risk assessor or lead inspector saying the lead has been abated, then you must assume there's lead there. And so that would mean that we're going to warn people about any kind of renovation or any kind of disturbance of that paint, that they have it done by certified folks, these people here who are taking the class today, lead abatement contractors, or at least someone who has a renovate, repair, and paint certification, which is a lead safety certification.
Right. And I think we kind of, up to this point, talked about maybe the outside. How about the inside of the home?
Absolutely. We found that in many older homes, the lead-based paint is throughout the house. It's in the baseboards, it's in the doors, it's in the windows, it's in the closets. We often see it in chair rails or crown moldings, those decorative elements that people painted with lead paint because it was a strong paint. It lasted a long time, and they didn't want to have to paint it again.
So we hear quite a bit about the attention on children. The lady who was here, Natalie, said that she's she's an environmentalist, but currently working as the kind of like the overseer of the childhood lead poisoning prevention, childhood.
That's right.
So could you maybe enlighten us a little bit about the importance of lead as it relates to a child, and then maybe the parent's role in that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Many people believe that lead poisoning is only a problem for children, but the truth of the matter is adults can and do get lead poisoned all the time, particularly adults who paint or work around paint or old wooden surfaces where there might be lead paint. We basically inhale it or ingest it. You know, we eat it or we breathe it. Children are a particular concern because the neurological damage of lead, you can damage an adult's brain. It's unfortunate. The children's brains are developmental from 0 to age 6. They're still developing. So if we damage a child's brain, we poison a child during the time when their brain is developing, we often cause a permanent problem because those neurological pathways are only open for a certain period of time. So if a child is 18 months old, maybe this is the 3 months that they're learning to distinguish shapes, to think logically, to hear, to read, whatever it is, to distinguish, different shapes and different things. And so what we end up doing is we take that child's brain, and during that short time period, we interfere with the neurological development. We can never get that time period back again. So that's the concern for children. Also, of course, the smaller body weight reacts more to smaller amounts of poisonous dust. Furthermore, they take it in much more readily. Children's bodies are like sponges, their skin is soft, their vessels are open, and so forth. Little ones, particularly pre-walking, they're on the floor most of the time, and what we've learned is lead dust is heavy and it settles down onto the floor. So these children are spending their time on the floor, crawling, walking around, and then they have classic hand-to-mouth behavior, right? They chew on their fingers, they pick up their toys and put them in their mouths, their pacifier, their sippy cup, their bottle, their cookie, their stuffed animal, everything comes to their mouth. So that's why they are much more likely to inhale the dust, they're closer to it, and much more likely to eat it.
So is it really mainly the children that we're thinking about who are apt to get poisoned, or, as we advance, biologically advanced? What are the risks there, if so?
Sure. Symptoms of lead poisoning, when we talked about neurological difficulties and pathways that are damaged, but also there are other damages, joint pain, we see headaches, we see memory loss, digestive problems, high blood pressure, sexual dysfunction, men and women, particularly a couple of childbearing age is running a significant risk. We see interesting correlation between older folks who get lead poisoned and maybe don't know, because they haven't had a blood test. They don't know what's going on, and so we begin to start treating them for other things. Oh, they have arthritis. Oh, they have migraines. They have these things, and then as we start to tighten up the diagnostic work, we see that what we're really dealing with is lead poisoning. It masquerades as so many other things. The only way to know if you're lead poisoned as a child or as an adult is to have a blood test. And those are readily available. You can even get a little capillary test and have results in 3 minutes.
So that's for the person. Let's say I'm living in a house that's pretty apt to maybe have lead paint presence or lead presence. Does lead presence mean it's a lead hazard? And if so, what should I do? Or how would I know? And what could I do?
Excellent question. The truth is, most of us either now do or have lived in houses with lead paint, and that's the reality. We just said the majority of the houses in New England have lead paint. You can live safely in a house with lead paint, and most people do. When it's intact, it's fine. It's not a problem when it's in good condition. The problem is when it begins to deteriorate, chipping, peeling, flaking, and when we cut through it or drill through it or sand through it, doing our remodeling or our prep for painting, we make this poisonous dust. and we create this terrible problem. So if you think that you might have a lead problem in your house, there are inspectors that you can hire, New Hampshire state licensed risk assessors, lead inspectors, that can come in and do a test for you. You also can get a dust wipe test, so we can just do a dust wipe on the floor and send it off to the lab and analyze the dust in your house to see if it has lead in it. And there are also some home tests. If you use them correctly, there's some conditions you have to understand a little bit about how to use them. So if you hire a lead safety certified technician, that is an RRP contractor, any window installer, painter today should have a lead safe certification. You can ask them to show it to you. Well, they know how to test to see if there's lead in your house.
So let's look ahead a little bit. What if I am a landlord and I find that I have a tenant who has a child who's been poisoned? What's the story with that?
If a child is poisoned in your house and the blood test is sent to the lab, their doctor tests, and we find out that they have a high level of lead, then someone from the state will call you and tell you that they're going to come and inspect the property. They must do an investigation when a child is poisoned. So they're going to come to your property. The landlord's going to have to set up an appointment, and they're going to come in. And there's two departments in the state. There's the case management department that works with the family and helps to bring the child's lead level down, and then there's the compliance department that works with the landlord to see how bad is the problem and what do we do now. So they'll come in, they'll do an inspection. If you have lead in the house, that's not a problem. But if you have lead that's a hazard, chipping, peeling, flaking, creating dust, then you're going to be given an order of lead hazard control. The Department of Health and Human Services will give you this, essentially an order to clean it up, and you have 90 days to come up with a plan. They call it a lead exposure hazard reduction plan, and you're going to tell them, here's how I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to hire this contractor, or I've been trained, I'm going to do the work myself. If you don't do it, then they'll be fining you. But if you do, there's no consequence at the end. They'll remove the order of lead hazard control, and you can go on with the sale or renovation or whatever you were doing. If you leave the order on the property, it will stay with the property even if you sell it.
Now, as we've been learning that New Hampshire kind of had a choice of how they wanted to handle lead. And our understanding, I guess in lay terms, is that New Hampshire is kind of like a lead safe state, kind of meaning something a little bit different than a lead free environment. I think some of us get confused maybe a little bit about some levels of remediation. For example, if you talked about RRP or renovators, painting contractors, anything that's disturbed over a certain size has to be dealt with. Well, that's not under an audit to correct that you just talked about, right?
No.
But that's something that could be done if somebody wanted to maybe avoid the possibility of going under order. So
if you're a landlord and you do your own renovation between tenants, maybe you go in and you scrape and you paint and so forth, you are required to take this one-day course. It's called the Renovate, Repair, and Paint, the RRP course. It's mandated by EPA. That's a national law. Has nothing to do with New Hampshire. Anyone who disturbs paint in a pre-78 building, meaning a landlord who's going to rent it, a contractor who's doing remodeling, a painter, anyone who's disturbing paint, and by disturbing we mean cutting into, scraping, aggressively washing. If you're power washing, that's disturbing paint. If you're washing with a sponge and the paint's coming off on the sponge, that's disturbing paint. So anyone who is disturbing paint more than 2 square feet in an apartment, or 6 square feet, depending on, there's some different regulations, but anyone who's disturbing more than just a few square feet must have this certification. That's a federal rule. The state does not dictate anything about lead paint unless a child is poisoned. If a child is poisoned, then you come under the state abatement regulations. So a way to avoid coming under those regulations and being put under order is to make sure that any painting or renovation done in your house is done by someone who is working lead safe, who's taken the one-day class, who understands how not to spread that poisonous dust around.
Okay. So let's say that we kind of are proactive, and we do testing, because we can get testing
Yeah.
vials to see. Then we've done a little renovation. How do we know at that point if it's safe or ready to maybe rent or have somebody occupy it?
So the biggest areas of concern are what we call friction surfaces. So it's not just a wall with paint on it. As long as that paint is intact, there's nothing chipping, peeling, flaking, that's fine. But when we start to have old windows and we raise and lower those windows and they rub against the casing of the window, the frame of the window, and that friction constantly deteriorates the paint and creates lead dust. So now we have little bits of this poisonous dust that gets scattered around the windowsill and the floor and so forth. So what we want to look for is any area that has old paint that gets rubbed against another surface, like a door or a window, or any areas with old paint that we step on. Steps, doors, thresholds, floors, those kinds of things. So if we can be aware of those friction and impact surfaces and remove the lead paint from those surfaces, change to a different, put stone or vinyl windows, or cover the stairs with vinyl or rubber or something, so that what we've done is either removed the lead paint altogether or covered it in such a way that it's not going to be chipping, peeling, flaking.
Most of us here in this room, anyway, have been in a lot of environments that most likely had lead dust floating around.
Yeah.
How would we know if we've been or are poisoned by lead?
So there are tests, lead tests, blood tests that you can have done. The easiest one is the little capillary test where we stick your finger. It's much like a diabetic checking for sugar. We collect a few drops of blood and we put it in a little portable machine called a lead care tube machine, and we can tell you right away what your lead level is, how many micrograms of lead in your blood. We see that doctors' offices, hospitals, health departments, WIC clinics have those machines, and sometimes they travel around and are available at country fairs and that kind of thing. I think we'll probably have one in October here in Lead Awareness Week.
You're certified to do that.
I am. I can do that. We do it in our classes.
Yeah.
If you take a lead safety class with us during the lunch break or whatever, we'll test for lead.
So we're talking about adults. What if I'm curious about if my child is poisoned?
You bring your child to, in our case, you just bring them to our office, or you bring them to, the doctor's office and get a lead test. Probably the most important thing if you live in an older home is to have your children tested, because the damage can be permanent, and yet if you find out early, it's easily reversible.
Now I understand, because you and I have talked quite a bit, there's an opportunity coming from the West Coast, right?
Yeah, Oregon.
To learn more about lead?
That's right. We're very excited to have a preview, a screening of a documentary about lead paint. It's a film. It's almost 2 hours, an hour full-length film. It's called Misled, and I've seen it. I've been fortunate to be able to screen the film, and it is a wonderful combination of family stories of families with lead paint, and also interviews with the scientists. What happened here and how did it happen and why do we have these problems with lead. The film is easy to understand, entertaining, and really explains the whole history and problem of lead. So the woman who produced and directed the film is bringing it here for us to have a few viewings of it here in New Hampshire. And one of them will be at Littleton High School on the 22nd of October at 6 o'clock in the evening. And before the film, there'll be, food and exhibits and, entertainment and education. Then there'll be the film, and after the film, there'll be a panel with some local experts to answer your questions.
Okay, so what if I want to be, this would apply to a lot of these guys, what if I want to be involved in helping people deal with lead, to test and to deal with it, and maybe be even a lead renovator or a contractor?
There are classes that you can take Can I say website? Our website is leadedu.info. So it's www.lead, L-E-A-D, dash, or hyphen, edu. .info. And there's many things. There's a page there for contractors, there's a page for property owners, there's a page for teachers, for parents, for children. But one of the things that's there is a list of all the classes around the state. And we have everything from one-day classes for basic renovation to week-long classes for the inspectors. So anybody who is interested in learning more and getting certified to work with lead, we have lots of opportunities for you to do that.
So, Kate, I didn't realize that was there, but it's here. This is a piece of wood that might look fairly typical in the old houses, chipped, kind of checked. So what is abatement, and does that mean I have to tear that out, or is there something else that we do?
Lead paint can be handled safely in a number of different ways. And these folks have all learned the term abatement, and abatement really means permanent removal. So if I want to abate this piece of wood with lead paint on it, I can do that by taking it out and throwing it away and getting another piece of clean new wood. That's abatement. Or I can enclose it, meaning I could cover it with something hard and rigid, like...
Something like this?
Yeah. I could cover it with something like Luan or Masonite, or I could cover it with this paint. This is called Fiber Lock. It's a lead block paint that, if I put it on correctly, lasts for 20 years. So we've got maybe 3 different techniques to get rid of the lead. We can remove the piece of wood with the lead, we can put some hard surface over the lead, or we can cover it with a paint that also is permanent.
So if somebody is like under order, let's say under order, what's that process that goes from A to Z on putting under order, and then who actually does the inspecting?
Okay. So if a child is poisoned in a particular unit, the property owner immediately gets notified, and maybe it's a rental apartment, let's say, so the property owner gets notified and the family gets notified. The family that has the sick child, we work with the child and the family to help them keep safe in the unit. Maybe we teach them some special cleaning techniques and so forth to make sure that the child doesn't get any worse. And in the meantime, we work with the landlord to try to abate the lead in the apartment. That might mean that we move the family out for a week while we do some work. We repaint, different things in the apartment might be handled differently. So perhaps certain kitchen cabinets are deteriorated enough that we just need to replace them. On the other hand, a door might be a beautiful old entry door, just the lead is chipping, peeling, flaking, so we're going to maybe encapsulate that with a different kind of paint, but keep that beautiful old door. So, sometimes property owners will say to me, don't make me get rid of the chair rail, that's the reason I bought the house. So we try to maintain those things that are, that add to the beauty and the value of the house. Just because we're throwing out the paint doesn't mean we have to throw out the feature that you like so much in the house. So we find a way to make the property safe. Sometimes that's a combination of things, but it's always cleaning and painting. And so what we end up with when we're done is a nice new, sort of finish on the house, but maybe maintaining the history and the integrity of the property. Then we teach the property owner how to keep it that way. So it's important that they know, for instance, on the lead block paint, if I put the paint on it and something happens, somebody runs into it with a piece of furniture and we chip it a little bit, somebody has to notice that and come along and fill that in so that we don't start to deteriorate and release that lead dust again from the underneath. So it's a question of knowledge and awareness and information, and everybody can live safely in the unit again.
Well, we know that the human needs kind of are anchored by food, shelter, and clothing. We're talking about these shelter issues here. Real estate people are in the middle of that, in the shelter end of it. And we know that a real estate transaction is governed by various sources of law. 7 sources, I think, right from the U.S. Constitution down to local zoning.
Wow.
And so we have to be concerned about the legal aspects of a transaction. So with that in mind, as real estate agents, because that's one thing we do here under this roof,
Yes.
what should our concerns be from the legal or from the point of view of law? If you could comment on that.
Sure. So one of the things, we teach classes, I'm a trainer, I'm an educator, so one of the things that we do when we teach is look for ways to coordinate the benefit, if you will. So we have a lead safety class, and if realtors take that class, then they get continuing education units to help them maintain their license. And then we have weatherization folks, and they get continuing education units and so forth. So we bring all these people together for whom lead is a problem for one reason or another. So a real estate agent might be concerned, if I have lead in this house, it's going to be harder to sell, right? So what would work for them then would be the benefit or the knowledge of what I can do to take care of that problem. So if I say to a seller, yes, you're right, there's lead paint here, and we know that, it's, age of the house and condition, we can look at it and see. But there are, this many lead-safe certified renovators in the area. There's these classes that you can take to become certified yourself to know how to do safe renovation. And also, right now, we're very fortunate in New Hampshire. There is $10 million worth of HUD funding in the state right now to give to property owners to help them remediate lead. It's a grant, it's a gift. They don't even have to pay it back. So a real estate agent who knows about that program and can help property owners to take advantage of that program would be, I think, a very valuable thing. You and I were talking earlier about how the real estate agent is the gatekeeper, have an obligation to share what information they know. But, they can share the good news as well as the bad news. So we try to get real estate agents to come into the classes and learn, as there's a great temptation, I think, with lead or anything that's a little scary to sort of put your head in the sand and not want to know anything about it. I hope that we encourage the real estate agent as well as the contractor to learn about this, and then you know how to fix it.
Well, I think one of the fears that we probably have, I think it's real, is that it's an expensive process to get rid of it. Does that bear out, do you think?
Well, I think it depends on the choices that we make. If that exterior of that house is all lead paint, and I'm going to try to make it safe, there's a variety of ways to do that. I could re-side the whole building, or I could touch up certain areas. I could cover it with something. So the expense really does depend on the choices that we make in terms of how we're going to remediate. Often there are options, and it's nice to know what those are. We were talking earlier in the class about how it just would not be cost effective sometimes to remove everything from this room and redo all the walls and all the floors and so forth. But if I can cover it with, say, a rigid surface, say a Luan or something, and then carpet, or then put my finished treatment on top of that, now I've enclosed the lead. I've made it safe by covering it with something, and I'll glue it and screw it and so forth to make sure that it's really safe.
Right. Now we have, and before you go, Keith, we do have a special guest here, and I just want to give him some recognition. The Superintendent of Schools. The minute that it was known that there was going to be like an informational film, full-length film, Superintendent Dr. Keith Kiefer said, I want to be in on that. I want to do something. I want to help out with that. So I want to give maybe him an opportunity to just say a couple of things about his interest.
Can we switch?
Sure. Do you mind?
We can switch seats if you'd like.
No, I'm fine.
Stay right there. I bet you the.
He's used to me breaking the camera. So.
Oh, I just think that the printer's in the way, but I'll let him worry about that.
Well,
I wanted to say something about, it's so important that the educational institutions get on board with this. We know that these special education programs, for instance, we know that a number of kids who are lead poisoned then end up in the school system requiring special services and costing additional funding and needing some special help from the school system. And when we begin to work with the schools to educate the parents about what some of these issues are, it helps everyone. It helps the families at home, and it helps the schools to bring maybe some of those costs down. So, and the families believe it when the school system is involved. It's awfully easy to say, oh, that's an old problem, we don't have that issue anymore, until the schools step in and tell them, oh no, it's a current issue today. So I'm very excited that you're on board with this and working with us.
Well, we're very pleased. We have a comprehensive wellness program in all of our schools to impact all of our children. And I think part of that is understanding some of the risks that are present in our community, in our homes perhaps, and so that our children are protected. We have a very important mission, which is to educate right now this generation of children in our public schools, and we take that seriously, and there are many fronts on which we try to attack that. It's not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it is also knowledge of your environment and things surrounding you. So, and we have comprehensive wellness programs. We certainly have special ed programs where children may be impacted, and this is New England.
Yeah.
We do have homes of the age that you have described previously, so we're aware that there's a risk. We happen to have our office in an older building, and we know that previously there was some lead paint there, so we're conscious of these factors and want to help add to the educational effort. Certainly the people sitting here today are being trained in terms of abatement and other things, what happens, and so we just want to make our parents, our guardians aware of the risk and try to help protect our children.
Absolutely. I've often said if the schools, as part of the curriculum, if we could devise a little, health, wellness, educational program around lead, it would be very helpful, because lead-poisoned child doesn't have any symptoms. They don't break out in spots as if they were chicken pox or something, we don't have the way. So it's one of those things. I think the children drive discussion in households about so many changes. Right. Recycling programs in most of our households, probably we wouldn't have recycled if the kids didn't come home from school and say, we do this, or they have an assignment to come home and talk about the power use in the house and so forth. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to educate the children and the families, and let them then bring that home with them from the school system.
Well, we thank you for your efforts.
Oh,
And,
sure.
We want to be a part of that. So.
Sure.
Gerald and I have been talking about this for over a month, so hopefully, and we'll look forward to having the film and providing the space for that. And
what can we do to help folks know about it? Is there anything we can offer?
well, often, we send out and distribute information to parents all the time through our buildings. Now, that's a little harder with adolescents, because it may go in the backpack and stay in the backpack, but our younger ones are pretty good at taking it home. So, we do have a website, and we do have Channel 2, so hopefully this will be on Channel 2. We do have a website where we can carry information about these types of programs, your website, so people can do a lookup, and we'll go from there.
If people want to get the tickets to the film, do they call you, or?
They could call here, and I don't know that we've even mentioned the date. It's October 22nd.
Right.
And it's 6 p.m. at the little...
And it'll be in the cafeteria.
Right. And I think as far as the attendee, we're saying that donations would be welcome.
So it's free. It's free to attend, and all they have to do is make a donation when they get there.
Hopefully, because there are some substantial costs associated with this.
Right. That's wonderful. And so they don't actually need to make a reservation. They can just show up at the high school that night. That's great.
And we're welcomed. We will send out flyers for you, just advertising it, and go from there.
Fabulous.
I have to run because I have another meeting, but
thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, and we're there to help support anything that's good for kids.
Right.
It's great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah. This is kind of neat because we have a class, actually, this is class time. You guys are actually in class. And it's impromptu. You guys weren't asked to make a prepared speech, and you don't have to. But I think the people who'll be watching this are everyday people like yourself. And some of you guys have driven a pretty good distance to be here, and you have a reason that kind of drives you to do the work that you do. And I know that's true with some of the guys that we have here. So I think it'd be kind of interesting if you want to, if you could kind of share, and maybe Kate can maybe ask some questions, because she's the one who knows where you're at so far in this training. Some observations, some reasons that maybe brought you here, and what you look toward, what you see yourself doing.
The research shows that there's a problem, and not only is it an opportunity for a contractor, but it's preventable, and it's just nice to be in on the solution. I'm Brian Hamlin, and my company is Hoyt Mill Contracting.
And you're right from this area.
Local, from Littleton, yeah.
As I said earlier, we have $10 million in the state right now. HUD has provided for us to remediate lead. But the truth of the matter is, we don't have enough contractors to spend all that money to do all the renovation we need to do. We have a terrible lead problem. We know that. We have a lot of lead properties with lead. So then I do some consulting to manage these projects. So someone identifies a property and we put it out to bid, and we have to bring contractors up from Massachusetts or over from Maine, because we don't have local contractors with the certifications to satisfy HUD that they can do this work safely. So I'm excited to see whatever we have, 7 or 8 of you here in the class today that are getting this certification, so that you can now bid on these jobs. That means a couple of things. More local people getting work, right? The job should be done more cost effectively, because I'm not paying to transport folks up that have to now, be housed here and so forth while the work's getting done. We keep the money in the local economy here. We have New Hampshire Housing does the project statewide, and historically the northern tier of the state has not been well served by this funding, even though there's a need, because we haven't had the contractors with the training here in this area. And frankly, there aren't enough contractors statewide, so the ones down in the southern tier are not inclined to travel up here. They don't need to. They've got plenty of work down there. So I think this is a very promising that we now are seeing contractors getting the certifications up here. I think just a couple of months ago we looked, and I don't believe there was one north of the Notch that was certified to do lead abatement work. So now we have several, and that's pretty exciting.
Well, my name's Joshua Spaulding. I recently graduated from college with a degree in aerospace engineering. And at first, when I graduated college, I thought that it would be a good idea to go into engineering and use my education that way, but it was too typical for me. So I thought that it would be better to use my education up here. And I thought, I was working at the Mountain View Grant, and I was looking for other opportunities, and I met Gerald. And he presented this idea with lead abatement, and it occurred to me that the number one goal of any community is to raise the standard of living for its inhabitants. So that's kind of what we're doing here, is educating people about poisons in their home. So it's kind of, it's important to remove that, and that helps to raise the standard of living for our community.
I'm here to get this course to obtain a job so I can work up in this area to remove paint from these homes. And I'm looking forward to passing this class to get that position.
And you're from Concord?
Yes, Concord.
area.
Yeah,
So,
I drove up here this morning.
Yeah?
We talk about contractors, and everyone certain level of construction ability with a contractor, but the truth is we have a shortage of lead abatement workers as well, which might be somebody with almost no experience or no construction experience, but is a person who is willing to learn and willing to work. I have promised the class here that when they are done with their worker training, some people are taking a 3-day class to get certified as a worker, and I promise when they're done I'm going to give them a resource sheet, which is a list of lead abatement contractors who are currently hiring, because there's such a shortage of folks who know how to do this work. So even people who don't have construction experience and aren't interested in being their own, construction company might find that this training is useful to them in both safety of their own home and their own family, and also the potential for another income source.
if anybody wants to speak with Kate, her landline is 603-271-4786, and the cell phone or mobile phone is 603-781-4304, or locally, they could call me.
Sure.
Regarding the movie or
Yep.
upcoming classes or whatever at 444-7781. So, Kate, thank you. This is kind of an interruption in your agenda.
It's fine.
And Bob, thank you for coming. And Darren's here for the Courier. I think this would be really good to kind of get the message out, create an awareness. I think that's the intent. Also, there was an attorney in earlier this morning, and I explained to him that sometimes the knowledge is helpful, because he was saying that lead is very scary and people think it's very expensive and hard to do. And he was glad to know that with advanced knowledge, it kind of calms the fears a little bit. It doesn't really make it worse. And as real estate agents, I think we feel that way, that we can maybe let people know, yeah, perhaps you do have lead presence. It may not be all that difficult to deal with it. If you deal with it now, it's, in some cases, it's like maybe a glorified paint job that
Exactly.
probably needed anyway.
One of the categories of people that I work with is investors, property owners, or folks who would like to buy a property at a good price and then maybe fix it up and sell it at a better price, right? If you're not afraid of lead, if you understand a little bit about it, properties with lead can be quite a bargain. And you could maybe pick up a property at a better price and then use your lead knowledge to make it safe, and then it becomes more valuable in the marketplace. So.
Sure. Good. Well, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you again, and folks, for participating.